Hi, everyone. This is my transition assessments. I hope that this slideshow works and that the video works and you guys can hear me all right. So I'm just going to start. So the list of my three assessments, I did the high school transition survey, which was my education-based survey, my career comparison assessment for employment, and then the adolescent autonomy checklist to focus on independent living skills. So my setting was students who are 9th and 10th graders without disabilities but are receiving tier 2 academic support because of their significant academic attendance and social concerns. It's a class that meets every day and receives assistance from a teacher in social studies and ELA typically, just because those two classes are the ones that you need for all 4 years versus a math and science, which you can get by with 3 years of that. The class size is pretty small. It's maxed out at 12 and it meets every day for 42 minutes. So it's kind of like a resource room setup, but kind of just focusing on social studies and ELA. Many of the students do not receive support at home to help them plan their futures, whether it's a single parent home and their parents are working constantly. And a lot of these students live below the poverty line, so they don't really have a lot of extra support or even like motivation to kind of finish school. These students have very limited ideas on the importance of a high school diploma and the doors that it can open for them, just because they don't get it. They don't understand like why it's important and what the point of it is. And these students really struggle with executive functioning and planning. So this is a really big crucial skill that we are kind of implementing and working on gaining. All right, so my first survey or slash assessment was the high school transition survey. It's a low stakes way to get students thinking about what comes next for them. So it's asking students what they currently do at their job if they're employed, giving them a chance to see what skills they already have. We're going to look at an example, kind of the questions that it asks in a minute. It allows students to say the things that they are currently good at and the things they struggle with. So they kind of mark that on the paper. And it allows the students to choose from a list versus them coming up with the ideas themselves, because that can be pretty overwhelming without really knowing how to. I feel like describing yourself is like one of the hardest things to do, especially when you have to say like what you're good at and what you're bad at. I chose this assignment because it seemed like a very simple way to get students thinking about their transition. The students I'm working with in this specific class don't really see a point in graduating high school. They think that they can get just as far without a high school diploma versus with a high school diploma. And I really enjoyed the fact that this survey wasn't just focused on college. I had a couple questions about it, but it didn't really like push the idea of going to college when you graduate high school. And since this is for students who have disabilities, I think that I would have to change a couple of the questions just because a lot of the students that I work with they're not classified special ed kids, so they don't really have disabilities. So my activity and how to implement this in the class. So it will be done during the start of the school year, probably like in the first or second week. It will be done alone so that the students answer it by themselves. And then we kind of have like a one-on-one meeting with the teacher. After they complete the survey, they're going to do a 3-2-1 as a reflection, and it will also be done during class time in the start of the year because classwork is pretty minimal in the start of the year for all their classes. So we can kind of put this in there and use it. And then we'll kind of hit it and look back at it again by the end of the school year to see what they've learned and improved on. Maybe they've checked off some of the skills that they wanted, or maybe they like have different skills that they want to focus on in the next year. So then we can kind of push that with them to their next grade. The 3-2-1 asks students 3 skills they need to work on. I can't remember. It's on the next slide. Students are also given the chance to start thinking about what comes next when they graduate. And what I said earlier, this assessment also does not focus on does not focus only on college as a post-secondary goal. They can list as many things that they want to do. So maybe they want to go to the military, maybe they just want to stop school after high school, go to trade school, etc. So now we'll have an example of some of the questions. So would your disability affect your job? So a lot of the students I work with don't have disability, so I probably just take that question out anyways. So circle the things you are good at and put an X on problem area. So kids your own age, older people, adults, making eye contact, listening carefully when people speak, accepting help, chemical dependencies, using time wisely, confidence, finish work with reminders, attitude, personal, family problems. I would probably take that away because I feel like that's kind of like a very personal thing. Same with the chemical dependency one. And they're also like ninth graders, so they're a little rude. Stand up for your rights, treating others with respect, able to ask questions, keeping mind on assignments, and getting to work and school on time. That is probably the biggest one that I think would be a problem area for all my students. And then it kind of also touched on independent living skills, which is something that I'll talk about a little bit later, which is why I really liked this in the beginning of the year, because the independent living skills survey we do at the end of the year, kind of, we can get a good glimpse from students' answers from this. So do you get independently get ready for school? Do you get to school on time? Do you start tasks without being told to? Do you have good school attendance? Do you make an effort to do your best? Do you use a planner to organize yourself? Do you use time in class to work on assignments? Do you cooperate with others when working together? Are you organized at school? And then future adult goals. After high school, I would like to live at home, in the country, alone, group home, in town, in a house, apartment, with your family, with a friend and a roommate, or in a big city. And students can kind of circle as many things as they want. And then this is the 3-2-1 that they kind of fill out after they finish. So 3 skills that they need to work on, 2 ways the teacher can help you work on those skills, and then 1 thing you definitely want to do when you graduate high school. So maybe you definitely want to move to a big city, or you definitely want to have a roommate. Just kind of something like that. So we can take this information from the students as a teacher and kind of see what we need to focus on for them later throughout the whole school year. And then we do revisit the survey back at the end of the school year, and they fill out the 3-2-1 again. So my next survey is the career comparison assessment. So this is for employment. Oh my God, my phone's blowing up. What is it? So this assignment was created by the Indiana Institute on Disability and Community Center on Community Living and Careers. There's a lot. This allows students to compare 2 jobs or careers based on training needed, salary, employment rate, locations, and questions the students have about the career. The survey allows students to see the different parts of a job, not just how much money they make or like what they have to do, blah, blah, blah. It also shows the requirements needed to obtain the job. So maybe you need special training, maybe you really do need to go to college, or you can just do it with only a high school diploma. Careers don't have to be surrounded by a college degree when doing this activity. I personally think that the teacher should have jobs that are all basically, if you have a high school degree, you can do this job, but they don't have to have a college degree to do it. I really enjoyed this assessment and the corresponding activity I plan to go with it. So these students really struggle with the idea of earning a high school diploma because they just don't see the value in it. And I think for this one to be successful, there has to be a lot of pre-teaching and introducing their careers. So I kind of think the activity that I came up with was kind of doing like a career day once a month for the students, where 2 different people, kind of in a perfect world, obviously this probably would never happen actually, but 2 different people could come in and talk about their jobs. I literally hear about like a new job every single day and think it's so cool. And I always am like, oh, that would have been cool to like think of before I went to college or to know about. And it can be very overwhelming to ask a student to just look up 2 jobs you're interested in. There's like a million jobs in the world. Like, I don't know what I'm interested in. So I think that this can help them really hone in their jobs. So it'll be done in class once a month. Each month in a perfect world, I would have 2 people come in and talk about the different parts of their jobs, helping students answer their questions on the form, which we'll see in a second, and learn about the different career possibilities. So the goal would be to get a blend of people with only high school degrees, college degrees, trade school degrees, and maybe even people with a high level degree, like a doctor or something like that. This will be done so the students can get a complete reflection after the meeting with our career guest. So that's what their secondary activity is. I personally only selected jobs that required at least high school diploma, just because I really want to encourage that high school diploma or that high school certificate. But this can be done in any class, but obviously we're going to do it in their class with me during that 42 minutes once a month. And this will be all year. I mean, this is really like a perfect world situation, but this will be done all year. But hopefully by the end of the year, students will have heard about at least 10 jobs they may have not ever heard about before, maybe have never known existed. So this is the questionnaire form. This came from the University of Indiana. I just copied it to my own paper. So some of the questions that answer is like the requirements, so like what schooling they need, what training they need, if they need communication skills, reading skills, writing skills, math skills should have been on there, but I don't know why University of Indiana didn't have it on there. The potential salary, so the starting salary, and then kind of how much you'll like make later, the employment rate. So if they think there's going to be a large need for people in 6 years when these students maybe go to college, or maybe when they graduate high school, then kind of something like that. The location, so if they could get this job right down the street from them, or if they'd have to move somewhere else, maybe just some other questions they have about the job requirements. And then after our like guests leave, the students will complete this reflection, just kind of what's the difference between the two jobs, what education is required for the job that you kind of were more interested in. Are you still interested in either job, or maybe like both of these jobs just weren't it for you? And then what do you want me as a teacher to know about how to help you study more about this career? So maybe you didn't like either job and you really want me to bring in somebody else, kind of just a slight little reflection like that. And so this will be like a year-long kind of project. And the students will be showing self-determination by telling me what they want and what they don't want. And my last checklist survey was the Adolescent Autonomy Checklist. So it was developed by the Youth in Transition Program from the University of Washington and the University of Virginia. I don't know, it's very confusing. And it's broken down into a lot of categories, but the big categories are can do already, needs practice, plan to start, or accomplish. So this allows students to check off what they already know how to do based on the independent living skills. And some of these skills are kind of unnecessary or like outdated. So I think that I wouldn't really include them as we go through the survey. Like we just kind of skip it. Like some of them are like dumb. Why did I choose this? So a goal for many, which I've never done any of these before, but I'm just assuming from the high school transition survey, was to live away from home. This means that they need to feel confident and comfortable with themselves and their skills to live independently. So it's can do, needs practice, plans to accomplish. So then we can take their information that they answer from those questions and kind of give them a yes or no and think about what skills they need to develop more. So it's how to implement this checklist. So I plan to implement the checklist toward the end of the school year in late April, early May, because it allows for students to apply for a summer job if they want one. And then I can help them apply for the job. I also know many of my students are independent during the summer because their parents work. So it's a time to kind of show the skills that they've gained. Like they can be independent. Their parents can leave them home alone. We can take their answers to these questions, particularly the ones about jobs, maybe budgeting, transportation, and spend a few class periods, or even just like a couple minutes each class period, just touching on these little skills to talk about. I know like during this school year, I kind of based this class around the class that I taught this school year, and my kids like didn't show up to school on time. So I taught them how to use RTS on demand, and I showed them how to turn on the alarm on their alarm clock on their phone because they would not wake up on time. But yeah, just like little things like that. So this assignment would go best. The assignment that I created would be a job of like a fake job application, and then kind of a cute few like interview questions that would kind of go along with it. I think because many students also struggle with arriving to school on time due to inconsistent transportation, we can also check about other options of walking or public transportation. So we also talked about how to use the RTS on demand system because I'm in a suburban district. But yeah, so just kind of talking about how we can apply for a job. So this is just the checklist. So it's like 6 pages long. So I just put a couple screenshots. So skills for future education, like if you want to go to college maybe, or if you want to go to trade school, meeting with your guidance counselor, checking for your future educational options, vocational or technical options, check on local websites, job opportunities, learning how to apply for a job. So that's kind of the part I took and kind of ran with. Living arrangements, so being aware of federal housing. So this is being aware of federal housing regulations for the disabled. So a lot of my students they don't have disabilities, but they could benefit from other federal housing, like subsidized housing benefits. Learning how to manage money and budgeting, learning the responsibilities of being a tenant, just kind of stuff like that. I'm sure their parents would really like the housekeeping, making beds and choosing decorations for your room, minor repairs, basic sewing and mending skills. I don't think I would really stress about that just because I don't really know how to sew. I don't really think it's like the most important skill. Yeah, and so I don't know why. Okay, so the job application activity and the practice questions. So I'm just going to read through the practice interview questions first, because I think if I click on this link, it's going to take it away and I don't know how to like keep sharing my screen. So tell me something about yourself. How did you hear about this position? Why do you want to work here? What did you decide to apply for this? Why did you decide to apply for this position? What's your greatest strength and what are your strengths and weaknesses? So that's kind of something that we've been really talking about for the whole school year. So by the time we kind of get to this point, students have understood their strengths and students have understood their weaknesses, and they can kind of really hype up their strengths. And like in an interview, you obviously don't really talk about your weaknesses as much. So I'm just going to click on the job application. Hopefully my screen is still sharing. So I found this on the internet. So it's just like first and last, social security, like with job types. So if they're students, they're probably working part-time jobs. Can you work nights? Probably not. Just simple, like basic job interview questions. Work experience, maybe if they've had a job before. I really like the part about references, and then students, if they want to apply for a job, like a real job, then they have 3 or 4 references that they already know will be reliable, which I really liked and think that would really help those students. Let me just see, I think that's my last slide. Oh, this is the whole autonomy checklist. I didn't really want to put it on 6 pages, but like working in the kitchen, laundry, helping with the family, housekeeping, like some of these stuff, the students probably can do them. They just choose to probably not do them. Like gardening, I would probably cut the gardening out. Maybe like mowing and watering the lawn is the only thing. But emergency, I think, is pretty important. Personal skills. Every day on the first day of school, I teach my students how to write an email. That's not on here, but that's a really important skill to have. The community skills, transportation, just kind of stuff like that. So those are my 3 transition assessments. I hope you guys like them, and I really hope this video works.